Ethan and I had been married for 5 years. I never thought that at my mother's funeral he would be with my adopted sister, Lily. The old woman was gone. We could finally be together. Lily, you know, I have always loved you. Once I divorce her, we will get married immediately. Ethan said sentence after sentence, but I felt like I had fallen into an ice cave. It was only now that I understood. He never really loved me. When he first pursued me, it was actually my mother who told him to. But then, when I was determined to leave him, he turned up at my wedding and caused a scene. He shouted at me, "Mia, you once said you would love only me for the rest of your life." At my mother's funeral, I saw Ethan with Lily. Ethan said he was tired and wanted to rest, and went upstairs. After I had taken care of everything, I was worried that he wasn't feeling well. So I took my medicine and went upstairs to find him. But before I even entered the bedroom, I heard him and Lily talking at the door. Lily said, "Now that the woman is gone, we can finally be together." Ethan was breathing heavily, but his voice was surprisingly gentle. I felt a pang of sadness. I couldn't help but push open the bedroom door with all my strength. The door slammed into the wall. There was a loud crash. It finally attracted the attention of the two people in bed. "Mia, why are you here?" I stood in the doorway. Ethan panicked for a moment. Then it seemed like he remembered something. He slowly got up and dressed. "Mia, don't worry. Mom passed away. Lily is very sad. I was just comforting her." Ethan walked up to me. He took my hand. The heat of his palms made my skin tingle. Was this supposed to be comforting? "Do you need to go to bed and rest for a while?" I shook his hands off forcefully. I walked over to Mia, who was still getting dressed. I slapped her hard in the face. "Lily, he's your brother-in-law. How could you do that?" "Mia, are you out of your mind?" At that moment, Ethan suddenly came to his senses. He pulled me back hard. Then he cupped Lily's face in his hands. His eyes were full of concern. "Lily, are you okay?" Seeing Lily shake her head with a pained expression, Ethan couldn't help but turn his head, and coldly looked at me. "Mia, what's wrong with you? Since you've seen it, then I'll just say it. I've always liked Lily. If it weren't for your mother forcing me to marry you, the person I should have married would have been Lily." His words were cold. Each sentence stabbed me to the heart. "You, what are you talking about?" After listening to his words, I froze. He was the one who proposed to me in the first place. He was also the one who promised to love me forever. Now, he's saying these things. "Mia, when your mother knew that you liked me, she forced me to marry you. At that time, I was already with Lily, but your mother threatened me with Lily. Mia, do you know, every day I was with you, I felt uncomfortable." Ethan dressed Lily, and chatted, while I just stood there, unable to react. My mother paid for Ethan's university fees. At that time, I really admired Ethan's hardworking and never-say-die spirit. I confessed my love to him many times, but he rejected me every time, until the year before we graduated. He suddenly proposed to me. I thought it was my sincerity that moved him, but now he told me he had never loved me. Was his love for me because of my mother's coercion? Listening to his angry words, my heart felt like it was being cut. Just then my father walked to the door of the house somewhat impatiently. "What are you arguing about? You can hear it from outside." As soon as my father entered the door, he saw Lily still sitting on the bed. Her eyes were red. Her face was beginning to swell. He frowned. He asked, "Lily, what's wrong?" My mother had passed away. I felt so miserable, but my sister said I was just pretending. She even hit me. As Lily said this, she covered her face. She couldn't speak because she was crying so hard. "Mia, she's your sister. How could you do that to her?" I was about to say something. My father's slap landed on my face. My face burned with pain, but the pain in my heart was even more unbearable. "You better think about what you've done here." After saying that, he didn't give me a chance to speak. He turned to look at Ethan. "Ethan, come help me carry some things," my father said. He took Ethan out. Lily and I were left alone in the bedroom. She slowly got off the bed, looking at me with arrogance. "Mia, everything you took from me, I'm going to take it back, one thing at a time." I looked at Lily's defiant expression. I turned around and left. "I don't like her. I never have." "Mia, I was about to go downstairs. She called out to me again. I didn't turn around. Suddenly I felt someone push me from behind. I lost my balance. I fell down the stairs. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital. I could smell the pungent smell of disinfectant. There was no one around. It wasn't until the nurse came to change my bandages that I learned I had been in a coma for 3 days and 3 nights. Because I fell from the upstairs, I had heavy bleeding. I also lost the baby that was 1 month old. I touched my flat stomach. Tears flowed down my face. Where is my mother? I held back the nurse who was about to leave. My voice was shaking. The nurse shook her head in confusion. My heart suddenly began to race. At that moment, I suddenly remembered that before I fell downstairs, the last thing I saw was Lily's smug smile. I didn't care about anything else. I directly pulled out the infusion needle and rushed to the funeral home regardless of consequences. When I arrived, I saw that the funeral home was already empty. A heavy stone was weighing on my heart. I couldn't breathe. Later, I asked and found out. My mother had been cremated yesterday. I returned home in a daze. But the moment I opened the door, I couldn't help but take a few steps back. Inside the house, Lily was leaning in Ethan's arms watching TV. Next to them, there was a strange woman peeling an apple for them. Dinner's ready, my father shouted as he walked out of the kitchen with the food. The family was all happy and harmonious. It felt like I was the outsider. Mia, why are you back? My father was the first to notice me. He looked at me in surprise. Then his face showed disgust. At that moment, the 3 people on the sofa looked at me at the same time. When we looked at each other, I saw surprise, delight, and arrogance in their eyes. One of them asked, Mia, are you feeling well? Ethan was the first to break the silence. He stood up from the sofa. He walked up to me. He took my hand. His face was full of concern. Seeing his hypocritical performance, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. I quickly pulled my hand out of his hand and walked directly to Lily, questioning him. Why did you push me? Sister, what are you talking about? Hearing Lily ask knowingly, my anger suddenly rushed up, raising my hand to slap her again, but the next second, my hand was tightly grasped by Ethan. He said, Mia, don't go too far. After that, Ethan threw me hard onto the sofa. I went too far. Ethan, why don't you ask her what she did? I covered my stomach, which had hit the corner of the sofa. I got up from the sofa, holding back the pain. Ethan stood behind Lily, protecting her. It was as if I was going to do something to her next. That's enough. Stop fighting. Mia, you're just in time. We just need to talk to you about something. My father broke the ice. Then he gave Ethan a wink and turned towards the study. Ethan turned and went into the bedroom and said to Mia, Lily is pregnant with my child. I can't let her down. Let's get a divorce. Ethan came out of the bedroom and put a divorce agreement in front of me. I looked at the black and white document. I couldn't react for a while. He told me, Lily is pregnant with his child. How do you think that makes me feel? What does that make me feel? My hand unconsciously goes to my stomach. It still aches a little. It reminds me of the child that was here, that is no longer here. Ethan, is this what you want? I turn my head, staring at the expressionless Ethan in front of me. My voice is shaking. Yes, I said it. I like it. It was always Lily. Ethan avoids my gaze. He turns around and takes Lily's hand. I watch them intimately. I suddenly think of the child I have just lost. I feel a special irony in my heart. The man I have loved for 7 years suddenly tells me that he has always loved someone else. That person even got pregnant with his child. Thinking about this, I can't help but sneer. Okay, I will grant you. I turn around. Without hesitation, I pick up the pen and sign my name on the divorce paper. Mia, I have something else to tell you. After I signed my name, my father seemed to relax a little. He took out the documents and walked up to me and said, Your mother is gone. You're in the hospital again. The company can't be left unattended. So I transferred your mother's shares to Lily. Lily has been helping us run the company for a few years. She can handle a lot of the work herself. My father took out another transfer agreement from the folder. Looking at it, I realized that my original assets with my mother's had been transferred to Lily without my knowledge. I felt a sense of irony. I always knew that my father didn't like my mother, but my mother had only been gone for 3 days. He couldn't wait. My father's voice sounded again. One last thing. He turned to the strange woman who had been sitting on the sofa. He said, "This is Aunt Linda. You can also call her mother in the future. Your Aunt Linda and I have known each other since we were young. We were going to get married after a while, but your Aunt Linda said she didn't want to join in with the kids. So after Ethan and Lily get married, we'll go on our honeymoon," he said. My father even kissed the strange woman on the forehead. I looked at the two couples. My heart completely broke. I don't know how I got out of the house. I just felt the dappled shadows of the trees outside, but they were exceptionally glaring. The happiness I thought I had. It was just wishful thinking on my part. The love I had longed for. It was just unrequited love on my part. Suddenly, I felt a warm current well up from beneath my body. Looking at the blood that had spilled from hitting the corner of the sofa, I finally couldn't hold on any longer. I collapsed. In a daze, I seemed to have fallen into some warm embrace. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in an unfamiliar environment. The pale yellow curtains were blowing in the wind. They gave off a warm feeling. You woke up. The door opened. A man carrying a bowl walked in. Ryan. Ryan is the son of my mother's best friend. 3 years ago, his mother had an accident. He went abroad with his father. Well, the fever has subsided. Do you feel better now? Ryan felt my forehead, then helped me sit up. He said, "Have some congee first." He scooped up a spoonful of congee, blowed on it gently, and handed it to me. He asked, "Why did you come back?" "I learned about what happened to your aunt." I was speechless for a moment. "I'm sorry. About what happened to your aunt. I didn't get back in time. It's not your fault." "Mia, I have something here. You might understand the truth if you read it." Ryan stood up and took out a USB drive from the drawer. He switched on the computer and plugged in the USB drive. I finally understood what had happened all these years. It turned out that Ethan's father was very ill at that time and needed a large sum of money. He asked my mother for a loan, and my mother's condition was that he had to marry me. For the sake of his father, Ethan agreed to marry me. But in the end, his father still could not be saved. The USB drive also recorded another truth. Lily is not my mom's daughter. She is Linda's daughter. Aunt Linda, the woman my dad brought home. My dad married my mom for money, but he hid it from my mom. He had a secret child with his childhood sweetheart. It's Lily. Later, my dad made up an excuse. He said Lily was an orphan. He felt sorry for her and took her in. 2 months ago, my mom found out about it. Watching the truth slowly unfold, I felt a pang of sadness. 2 relationships that I had thought were beautiful. In the end, they both ended in betrayal. Ryan took my cold hand in his warm hand. He whispered to me, "Mia, come away with me. Let's leave this place." His words and actions made my heart feel a warmth. Looking into Ryan's bright eyes, I nodded firmly. Since the people we love don't love us, then we don't need to continue to love each other. I stayed at Ryan's house for a few more days. After I had recovered, I went back home. "Ethan, I'm going to decorate the wedding in blue. What do you think?" As soon as the door opened, Lily's gentle voice came over. As soon as I opened the door, Lily's face immediately flashed with displeasure, but it quickly disappeared. It returned to its previous appearance. "Sister, you're back." She stood up from the sofa, walked over to me, took my hand and said, "Ethan and I are planning the wedding. You're more experienced. Do you want to come over and help me?" Sigh. I never thought getting married would be so troublesome. I originally planned to get married in 6 months, but I was worried that a wedding dress wouldn't look good on a pregnant woman. My father set the date for 1 month later. She said. Lily touched her belly. Her face was full of a happy smile. "Not interested." I broke free of her hand. I didn't want to deal with her at all. I walked straight into the bedroom. She asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm packing my bags." I suddenly heard Ethan's cold voice from behind. I turned my head. I saw his gloomy eyes. At that moment, the heart I once had for him had completely disappeared. I just realized that I could stop loving him too. "This has nothing to do with you." I didn't look at him again. Instead, I started packing my suitcase. Mia, you're not leaving. I won't let you. Ethan hurriedly placed his hand on my suitcase. I looked at his hand and suddenly laughed. Then I slapped him in the face. Ethan, we're divorced. What makes you think you can stop me? As I spoke, I could clearly see that Ethan was stunned. He probably didn't expect me to hit him. All along, I always tried to accommodate him, even when I was busy at work. I made time for him, but now, I don't love him anymore, and there's no need to continue to accommodate him. I listened to what I said. Ethan frowned, without saying a word. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. I took my mother's urn from his hands, which he had placed on top of my suitcase, and picked up the suitcase. I had just put the suitcase in the boot of Ryan's car. I was about to get in. Ethan came running after me. Ethan grabbed my wrist. His anger was almost palpable. He said, Mia, you're not going anywhere. When your mother didn't keep her promise, my father didn't get the money in time for treatment. Now that your mother is gone, you're going to take responsibility for that. After that, Ethan dragged me forcefully towards the house. At that moment, my other hand was grabbed by a stronger force. Ethan was also restrained. Ryan grabbed my other hand. Ethan's face immediately turned ugly. He said coldly, you are already divorced. It's not appropriate for you to behave like this in front of me and touch my girlfriend. Ryan exerted some strength. I fell into his arms. He asked, your girlfriend? Ethan looked at Ryan incredulously, and looked at me in his arms again. The anger in his eyes intensified. Yes. Ryan put his arm around my waist. The intensity increased a little more. Honey, if we don't hurry up and go, we'll miss the plane. Ryan turned around, gave me a light kiss on the forehead, and then ignored the furious Ethan, and opened the car door for me. I got in the car, looked at Ethan, who was getting further and further away, and my heart was completely hopeless. Ryan, can you do me a favor? Ethan said. When my mom didn't transfer the money to him, I didn't believe it. My mom would never do such a thing. Sure enough, a week later, I got the answer I wanted. At that time, my mom did transfer the money to Ethan, but the money was quietly transferred away by Lily. I collected all the evidence, including the video of Lily deliberately pushing me, and sent them back to China. These things were my wedding gifts to Ethan and Lily. 3 months after arriving in the United States, I ran into Ryan's stepmother at a cafe. The woman, dressed in luxurious clothes, was sitting in front of me. I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Auntie, hello. Don't be nervous. I just came to see how you are. After saying that, the woman lifted up her coffee, took a sip, sat down, put down her coffee cup. She looks at me, and says, this boy is really something. No wonder Ryan keeps thinking about him. The woman says, actually, I came here today to let you know something. As she says this, she takes a file folder out of her bag and gently places it in front of me. I open the file folder, and the contents take me by surprise. They are neatly folded together, and the thick folder is full of photos. There were pictures of Ryan sitting in front of a window, lost in thought, of Ryan painting in the studio, and of Ryan lying on a hospital bed, looking weak. Each of Ryan's paintings corresponded to a photo. However, the person in these paintings was always the same, me. I saw pictures of me as a child, fighting with other kids for candy, and of me as a grown-up, going to school with a school bag, and of me when I first joined the company, learning from my mother how to conduct business. Looking at these photos, I froze. My nose started to feel a little bit sour. This is how Ryan has looked over the years. I don't think you know. 3 years ago, when Ryan and his father came to the United States, he already had depression. I couldn't help but be shocked again. Ryan has always been a very cheerful person in my impression. How could he get depression? The woman looked at me in surprise, and said slowly, don't you know, Ryan has liked you for a long time. I heard it from his father. You grew up together. At first he thought you would get together, but then you fell for someone else. But I never knew about this. I looked at the vivid photos in my hands. My heart trembled. Some people are like that. They like to hide their feelings deep down, like Ryan. Maybe he kept it all inside for too long. Maybe it was seeing you marry someone else, and then his real mother died. All these things piled up together. His emotions suddenly exploded. I heard his father say, "On the day you got married, Ryan almost committed suicide. He was saved in time." Later, his father brought him to see me. After 3 years of treatment, he recovered. But then you appeared again. In fact, I've always wanted to meet you. I wanted to see what kind of girl could make Ryan like you so much. But Ryan was always worried that I would scare you, and never let me come. This time I snuck in. Don't tell him, okay? After that, she put her forefinger to her lips and made a shushing gesture. Looking at her playful expression, I couldn't calm down. During the 3 months I was in M country, Ryan had repeatedly expressed his feelings for me. But I had just gotten out of a failed marriage. It was too difficult for me to accept another man immediately. Moreover, I never realized that Ryan loved me so much. In fact, I knew. He had been courting me for a long time, but I always rejected him. Every time he came back, he looked so depressed. As his stepmother, it made me feel sad. I just want to advise you. A failed marriage does not mean everything. Don't trap yourself in a cage and refuse to come out. I also had a failed marriage. But look, I'm living quite happily with Ryan's father. So, Mia, what are you doing here? The woman was about to reach out and grab me, but she heard Ryan's voice behind her. She shivered with fear. She quickly turned around, picked up her bag, and hurried away like she was running away. Before she left, she turned around and threw Ryan a kiss. Mia, that woman didn't say anything to you, did she? Ryan walked quickly up to me. His eyes were a little bit evasive, and his face was slightly flushed. He said, "Nothing much." And then he said, "How did you know I was here?" "I was going to go to the office to look for you, to tell you that I booked a private room for tonight. We could have dinner together. But you weren't there. Your assistant said you went out for coffee." "Did the older lady really not say anything to you?" Ryan asked me tentatively. Seeing his nervous expression, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Really not. Okay, you should get back to the office. I still have to talk about the contract in a while." After saying that, I pushed Ryan out of the cafe. After returning to the office, the partner also arrived soon. Ryan was afraid of delaying my work, so he left after a few brief words. Unexpectedly, while I was in the office talking about the contract, I suddenly saw Ethan, who had hurried over. He smiled at me and said, "Mia, long time no see. You look even more beautiful." Once the business partner left, Ethan slowly came up to me. His face was full of a smile. It had only been 3 months since I had seen him. He looked haggard. His whole appearance had changed. In the past, he had always been indifferent to me. Even after we got married, he never had me in his heart or in his eyes. But now, looking at his ingratiating smile, I felt nothing but disgust. I turned around and didn't want to talk to him. Unexpectedly, he took the lead and entered the office. He said, "Mia, stop drinking coffee. It's bad for your stomach. Your stomach already has problems." Ethan finished and poured the coffee on the table away. He replaced it with the milk he bought. Watching his actions, I froze. It turned out that he knew I had a bad stomach. He just didn't care before. "What are you doing here?" I sat back in my chair. I flipped through this morning's meeting report. "Mia, come back with me, okay?" Ethan walked up to me. He gently took my hand. "Come back." When I looked up, I met his deep, affectionate eyes. But this affection came too late. "Yes, come back, Mia. I was wrong about everything in the past. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Can you forgive me just once? Just this once?" he said. Ethan gently pulled me into his arms. This time, I pushed him away, the embrace I had longed for so many times. Now, I no longer wanted it. "Ethan, we can't go back." I pushed him away firmly, looking him straight in the eye. "Ethan, we are divorced. You handed me the divorce papers yourself. You made me sign them yourself. No, we can still go back. If you forgive me this once, I will make it up to you." Ethan looked a little anxious. He hurriedly tried to come over and hug me, but once again, I pushed him away. I said, "Ethan, Do you think we can go back to the past? I turned around. I took out the old morning after pregnancy slips and abortion certificates from the bottom drawer. I looked at them. I was a little puzzled. I said to myself, what is this? Ethan took the slips. He looked incredulous. He muttered, no, it can't be. This can't be real. Ethan's voice was hoarse. His body was shaking violently. He took a few steps back. He was about to lose his balance. Ethan, the time on the report. It's the same as the day of my mother's funeral. Ethan, do you think we can go back in time? She asked again. This time, Ethan was silent. I watched as his body trembled. I told the assistant to escort him out. I took the report with me when I left, just to remind myself not to make the same mistakes again. I never thought it would come in handy. Ethan's back as he left, just like mine when I left the Smiths. He looks lost. I don't look at him again. I turn back to the meeting minutes. My father gave Lily my mother's share of the inheritance, but he couldn't touch my entire share. I withdrew my own share. With Ryan's help, I quickly set up my own company. The company was just starting up. There was still a lot to do. I buried myself in the paperwork. I didn't notice that it had started raining until late in the evening. When I looked up from the pile of documents, it was dark outside. Ryan had been sitting on the sofa for a while, smiling at me. Ryan, when did you get here? I rubbed my sore eyes. I looked up at him. It's been a while. I didn't want to disturb you while you were busy, so I didn't dare to disturb you, he said. Ryan got up from the sofa. He walked up to me. The next second, he pushed me against the corner of the table, excitedly said, Mia. I saw him. Ryan's body pressed down a little more. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Nervousness shone in his eyes. I just opened my mouth. Ryan, I didn't finish my sentence. His lips had already come close. He held the table with one hand and wrapped his other arm around my waist. He kissed me with some emotion. It was the first time we had been intimate like that in a long time. I looked at the reddened corners of his eyes, which were close to me. I suddenly remembered what his stepmother had said during the day. My hand also unconsciously rested on his shoulder. Just as I was about to welcome his kiss, he suddenly pushed me away. Mia, you. His eyes were full of longing, but I could feel the hand on my waist trying to control himself. But I couldn't help trembling. After a while, he finally let go of me. He took off his jacket and put it on me. He said, it's raining outside. Don't catch a cold. Watching him trying to control his emotions, I felt a wave of warmth in my heart. Thank you. Is everything settled? If it's settled, I'll take you out to dinner. Ryan opened the door to the office for me. I smiled at him and followed him out of the office. He said, Mia, happy birthday. As soon as I entered the private room, I heard everyone wishing me a happy birthday. The room was full of colleagues from the company, and Ryan and my friends. The room was full of roses and balloons, and there was a big birthday cake on the table. I suddenly remembered. Today was my birthday. I said thank you, and carefully stored all the gifts. I blew out the candles to the sound of everyone's best wishes. When the lights came back on, I froze. I thought this was the birthday party Ryan had prepared for me. I didn't realize it was the scene he had carefully arranged for proposing. Mia, marry me. Ryan held a bouquet of roses in one hand and a diamond ring in the other. He knelt down in front of me. His eyes were full of expectation. Yes. Without any hesitation, I took the roses. He looked at me in surprise. He probably didn't expect it. In his usual courtship, I actually said yes this time. Ryan looked at me in disbelief, then at his empty hand. His anticipation turned to excitement. He quickly put the ring on my finger, as if he was afraid I would change my mind. My birthday party ended with everyone's best wishes. It was late when we got home. Ryan walked me downstairs, kissed me on the forehead, and left satisfied. I had just turned around to go upstairs when I saw Ethan again. He was hiding under a dim streetlight. I couldn't even see his face. It was the broken cake next to him that clearly revealed his purpose for being here. You really are with him. Ethan's voice was low. His tone was full of doubt. This has nothing to do with you. I turned around and just wanted to go upstairs. Ethan grabbed my hand. You can't be with him. Why not? You love me. You said so. You'll only love me. Ethan tugged harder, pulling me into his arms. Then he lowered his head and kissed me. I struggled, trying to break free, but I couldn't. Finally, I bit him hard on the corner of his mouth. Then he let go. Mia, what are you doing? Ethan frowned, and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand. He turned his head and looked at me unhappily. I said, Ethan, I've already told you, we are divorced, and I don't love you anymore. So don't come looking for me again. After that, I turned around and walked upstairs. But Ethan grabbed me again. He said, that's not true. It can't be. Mia, you once said, you only love me. You won't be so heartless to me, he said. Ethan once again tried to hug me, but the next second, with a loud slap, my palm landed loudly on his face. Ethan, wake up. You were the one who cheated. You were the one who filed for divorce. Now you know the truth. You regret it. Ethan, it's too late. We can't go back. I don't love you anymore. After saying the last sentence, I saw Ethan freeze in place. He was in a daze. I left without looking back. He probably didn't expect me to do it. It was the first time. But a belated confession of love is worth less than grass. His love for me had long since lost its meaning. After that day, I never saw Ethan again. Meanwhile, Ryan and I were busy preparing for our wedding. I thought my happy life was about to begin, but who could have imagined? On the day of the wedding, Ethan actually came in a suit to steal the bride. He said to me, Mia, you said, only love me. Mia, I'm here to pick you up. Let's start over. We can still have children together. At the wedding, Ethan held my hand tightly and confessed his love to me in front of Ryan. I noticed people whispering under the stage, so I tried to break free from his hand. Ethan, are you okay? I've made it clear to you. I don't love you, and you're not welcome here. Yes, I'm crazy. Without you, my life has no meaning. Mia, marry me. We can start over. With that, Ethan got down on one knee, his eyes pleading. Just then, outside, the voice of another woman. You woman, don't show your face again. With that, Lily pushed her way through the crowd with a knife, charging straight at me. In that split second, Ryan quickly got in front of me, and then, I felt warm liquid splash on my face. It all happened so suddenly, I was completely unable to react. By the time I reacted, Ethan had already collapsed in front of us. His eyes suddenly lost their luster. The scene was in chaos. I saw Ryan quickly call for emergency services. The people around us restrained Lily. Our wedding was ultimately not completed, but in the end, I did marry Ryan. As for what happened afterwards, I learned it from Ryan. Ethan didn't survive. He was pronounced dead on the spot. Lily went to prison for murder. The truth I sent back then caused Ethan to call off the wedding. With Lily's abilities, even if she had the most shares, she couldn't keep the company running. My father and her mother also chose to commit suicide after the company went bankrupt. The company went bankrupt. My boyfriend broke off our engagement. My parents committed suicide. This series of blows drove her insane. She came to M Country to seek revenge on me. But isn't all of this also of her own making? Mia, don't think about it anymore. They all deserve it. Ryan put his arms around me from behind. His chin rested lightly on my shoulder. His hands caressed my stomach, which had already become slightly protruding. Yes, they all reaped what they sowed, harming others. In the end, it also harms oneself. The end.